Hey guys, so far in this unit we've been talking about how to handle different exponent properties. Well, now you're going to use those exponent properties to go ahead and graph an exponential equation. Okay, so let's do some quick review over things that we've learned earlier in the year. Okay, so earlier in the year you learned how to computer's restarting, how to graph a linear function such as y equals 2x. And the way you did that was you plugged in values. Remember, in your table, you'd always plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then you would go ahead and put those into your function, y equals 2x. Okay, so let's put your x values in. So you have y equals 2 times -2. Well, 2 times -2, of course, if you multiply those together, you're going to get -4. And then you just go down in the row. What's 2 times -1? That's -2. What's 2 times 0? That, of course, is 0. 2 times 1 is going to be 2. And lastly, of course, 2 times 2 is going to be 4. Okay, so that's how you would fill in your t-table when you're trying to graph a linear function. And then, of course, we can go ahead and graph those. Okay, so if we look at our first ordered pair, remembering that your ordered pairs, x goes first, y goes second. So we have -2, -4. Graph your point. Let's make this a little bit bigger. -2, -4. Okay, then we have -1, -2. And a couple more here. We have 0, 0, 1, 2. And last but not least, we have 2, 4. Okay, so you can see that you have a linear line or a straight line going on your graph. And once you have those points graphed, you can then draw your line through them. Okay, so that, if you remember, is how to graph a linear function. Okay, but today you're going to learn how to graph an exponential function. So basically you're going to be doing the same thing, except you're going to have to use some of your exponent properties. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in all of our values. We have our -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, and we're simply going to plug those into our function. So we have 2 to the x, so we have 2 to the -2. But what do we know about negative exponents? We don't like those. Okay, so we got to send it downstairs. So we have 2 to the -2 becomes 1 over 2 to the 2, or another name is 1/4. Okay, so we have 1/4 for this guy. Okay, let's do 2 to the -1. So we have 2 to the -1. Remember, we can't have negative exponents, so we're going to send him downstairs. Or 1 over 2 to the first, which is also known as 1/2. Okay, the next ones get easier. You don't have to mess with the fractions. Remember, anything to a 0 power, what's 2 to the 0? Well, anything to the 0 power is always going to be 1. And then you can go right on down the row. What's 2 to the 1? Well, that just means 2. Okay, so you don't even have to do anything. And then the last one, you have 2 squared. 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so we have our t-table filled out. Now we can graph our exponential function. Okay, so our first one is -2 1/4. So we're going to go left 2 and then just up just a tiny bit, 1/4 of a unit. Okay, so there's your first dot. Then we have -1 1/2. So you go left 1, up just a little bit more than the last one, half a unit. Then we have 0, 1. One, 2, and 2, 4. Okay, so once you have your exponential function graphed, you can go ahead and make your line. Okay, you'll notice that an exponential function is going to kind of look like a roller coaster, an incline. okay, or sort of like a boomerang of sorts. Okay, so make sure you have these two things down. We're going to go ahead and practice a couple more, and then we will wrap her up. All right. Okay, let's try 5 to the x. Okay, so as usual, we have our -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And this time our function is 5 to the x. So we're going to plug in all those x values into our exponent there. So we have 5 to the -2. So we know that we can't have a negative exponent, so we're going to send him downstairs. So 1 over 5 squared. And we know that 5 squared means 5 times 5, or 25. Okay, so you have a very small fraction on this one. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay, so we have 5 to the -1, which of course becomes 1 over 5 to the first when you use our exponent property. And then 5 to the first is 5, so we have 1/5. And then, like last time, you'll get to stop using the fractions and it becomes easy. What's 5 to the 0? Well, anything to the 0 power is always going to be 1. And then we can go right down the row. 5 to the 1 is going to be 5. And 5 squared means 5 times 5, or 25. Okay. So if we graph this, we have -2 1/25. We're going to zoom in. -2 1/25, so you're barely above 0 here. Then we have -1 1/5. Then we have 0 1. One 5. And last but not least, we have 2/25. So this guy is actually going to end up way up here. And so we don't even have enough room for him on our graph. Okay, but if you go ahead and draw your lines, you're going to have, once again, this escalating line, or your boomerang shape. It's going to exponentially grow every single ordered pair. Okay, so if your line looks something like that, you have probably done it correctly. Okay, we have one more type, and it's going to be the type where you have a fraction inside of your parentheses. Okay, so let's give it a try. Of course, we have our same x values, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and plug these in. Okay, so we have 1/4 to the -2. Okay, and what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and plug this in on your calculator. So if you do your parentheses, 1 divided by 4, and then push your caret sign and -2, it's going to go ahead and give you your answer. So push enter, and that will give you a 16. Okay, so if you can plug these into your calculator, that's going to make it a little bit easier for you. Okay, so let's try -1. So you have a 1/4 to the -1, and once again, plug it into your calculator. So we have 1 divided by 4, caret sign, -1, and that will give you 4. And then it gets a little bit easier. 1/4 to the 0, of course, is going to give you 1. And then you can plug in your other two. So 1/4 to the 1, of course, if you wanted to plug that in your calculator, you could do that. 1 divided by 4, caret sign 1, and that gives you 1/4. And if you continued on, 1/4 squared in your calculator is going to give you 1/16. Okay, so let's plug these in on your graph here. So we have -2 16. So go left 2, then up 16. You're going to end up being off your graph again. Should have made these a little larger, I guess. Then you have -1 4. Then you have 0 1. And then your last two are 1 1/4 and 2 1/16. Okay, so there's your points, and you can go ahead and draw your line between them. Okay, so once again, you have that horseshoe shape. It's just facing the other direction this time. Okay, so the last thing that I need you to write down are these two things. Okay, so how do exponential equations compare to linear equations? Well, exponential equations have variables for exponents. Okay, so exponential equations have variables for exponents, and linear equations do not. Okay, so exponential equations have variables for exponents, and linear equations do not have variables for exponents. Okay, how do exponential graphs compare to linear graphs? Okay, well, exponential graphs are going to be curved or rise exponentially. Okay, so they're going to be curved or they're going to rise exponentially. But linear graphs are always going to be straight, and we learned about them earlier on in the year. Okay, so these are all the things you need to know for today. Hopefully you can apply this on your homework. See ya.